Oh boy, oh hooray. Example number 386 of why I long ago abandoned watching boxing. Pacquiao's gonna get a fight with some dude. Here's my prediction for the fight. I'm putting my name on this. Pacquiao is going to do the whole fight from inside an iron lung. They're going to put an iron lung inside the ring. And he's going to open the door just long enough to get out the occasional annoying jab. Adelaide Bird is going to score it 486 for Pacquiao to -10 versus the other guy. There. That's the outcome. Save the money on the pay-per-view. Buy yourself a good bag of Coke instead. You're welcome.
The big black kid that crushes your whole block. Dow Jones, milestone, genuine short shot. Street smart, sweet part, you never want none. The beat starts, airing them out, run. I don't get down with snitches and the crooked shady bitches that want to...
Colonel Hector Bravado of Breakup Gaming Society at your service. We talk about 3 things in the span of 30 minutes or so. Booze, board games, hip-hop. Not necessarily in that order. We do a short segment on each. And that's our day. We're out of your hair. We're sort of like a bender where the occasional board game breaks out, and we usually have something from the golden era on, or some underground grimy stuff. Anyway, special approach to this week's game of the week. The JK, who came on earlier, a few episodes back, and did our track of the week because he knows his hip hop, is also going to do Game of the Week, and he's going to talk about his I Ching practice. What does that have to do with games, you might ask? I've got 2 answers. 1, I don't know. 2, loosely related via tarot, which he informed me began as sort of like a parlor game. Ooh, what's in the future? Couldn't it be exciting? Ho, ho, ho. And I got to thinking about tarot in games, about divination in games, because these divination tools, even down to Ouija, has a rule to it and has pieces, but whereas I go into the confines of a game to escape and not learn much at all, except how to have a good time, the pieces, quote unquote, of JK's game are designed to bring clarity outside the theater of the game. So we talked to him about that. He's a thoughtful, humble, and interesting dude. So there you go. I Ching's Game of the Week. I'm going to do a quick drink of the week, and JK is going to give us another track. Here we go.
Drink of the week.
Had some Kettle One laying around, poured it on some ice, splash of ginger ale, slice of lime. Frankly, not that fucking interesting. Let's get to Game of the Week.
Game of the Week.
This is Game of the Week with your host, Inquisitor, Cinnamon Apple Cheese Dick, and a very special guest, Breakup Gaming Society, and a topic that's game related, but we haven't explored in quite this way. With us is JK, at the JK, if you follow his wisdom on Twitter. How you doing?
I don't know about the wisdom, but I'm doing pretty good.
Glad to hear, my friend. You might recognize JK's voice. He was on a few episodes back for Track of the Week, and I always wanted to come back and do one with JK where I was sober. He picked a really good Prodigy track, but I kept that poor bastard on the phone for 2 hours because I was wasted, and he indulges me too much. But today's about you, man. The JK runs a really interesting website or venture that's on Patreon, correct?
Yes. So I have the website, and the Patreon is linked on there, but yeah.
And Two Dreams is related to his attempting to share his explorations of the I Ching.
Right. Yeah, Two Dreams originally started for a variety of reasons. A lot of it was to help people that have also lost their minds at one point. But then, I mean, I lost my mind in a way that caused me to do like over 10,000 I Ching readings in the past 3 years. So I kind of pivoted a little bit, and that's how next week's wisdom came about, and that's where I have my sidereal astrology, I Ching horoscopes, and such.
Yeah, and also, and if you tune in to anything he does, folks, one thing is J.K., as he just said, has spent a lot of time with this divination system in earnest, in a way to sort of, you do that alchemical thing where you make more clarity out of madness. That kind of seems to be your thing.
Right. I mean, yeah, and I had to do it myself with the help of pharmaceutical drugs prescribed because I lost my mind. But yeah, like there's actually a hexagram. Hexagram 3 is basically like that. It's I call it confusion. It's making like some sense out of the confusion. But yeah, that's especially what I've been trying to do with the I Ching. I mean, it started just out of a need for myself to find clarity and have some certainty after having so much uncertainty in certain situations in my life. And it kind of led me down the path I'm on now.
Yeah, man. And what does this have to do with games? You may ask. Well, I got JK. You told me that tarot, which is a divination method practiced by Jian, aka He She Who Thirsts, one of my Colorado Springs cast. You told me that tarot was once a game, and
yes,
yeah,
it started. I think it was back in France. I'm not the biggest tarot buff. I don't really enjoy using it that much, but it did start as like a playing card game at one point.
And what fascinated me about the parallel, I was been thinking, I had essays in the back of my mind, half formed, about what makes what the hell, did you hear that?
I did hear that.
I got winds blowing around. The spirits have already descended. Man, that scared the shit out of me. Is what makes my whole life the enclosure and known of a game so appealing to me when the rest of life isn't. And some of the parallels to the I Ching, and again, it's not a game in that you have a metrically provable winner, but I kind of wanted to talk about some of that overlap and convergence between a game, which is kind of nice because for a few minutes you're with your friends, you're safe. The highs and lows and bads of the universe for just a few hours are more or less known, and then there's an outcome. Then the curtain drops, and you've limited the variables. But what fascinates me is that I Ching does have some at least rules, or at least some guidelines you had to get started with. But the end result isn't a winner. It's pointing back out to question mark. And if you would, by the way, stop along the way and for people who may not know, including me, talk about what terms like sidereal and hexagram mean. But yeah.
So sidereal is a form of astrology. I mean, when it comes to astrology, I've had tutorship, if that's the right word for it. I've studied under an astrologer that really knows their shit with sidereal, but I'm kind of like the deaf, dumb, and blind guy that can get by with astrology to a certain extent. But sidereal it's sidereal, the form used by Dana Knuckles. It's quite different from Vedic astrology, which uses the Lahiri system. She has her own system. She created her own correspondences, things like that. And I really subscribe to everything she does with astrology. If anyone's interested, you can Google the People's Oracle It'll bring up her work. I highly recommend her work. She's always on point. She predicted this new flux of COVID at the end of summer 2021. So there's that for sidereal. It's a little different if you have certain houses. If your sun is like my tropical astrology, Sun in Taurus. Tropical astrology is the traditional form in the West. I'm Sun in Taurus and tropical. I'm Sun in Aries and sidereal. It can shift away. It can shift around your houses like that a little bit, just because it uses a different system. But like I said, I'm a dunce when it comes to this. I just know how to get the information I need from it. But was there something else? You said sidereal and something else. I'm not sure what else.
Yeah, I know. Generally, it's here's what I know about I Ching from China. Very old pickup sticks. That's
Right.
it. And you start talking about hexagrams stuff, but when you talk about this, it's almost like a spiritual RPG where the character is you, and the playing area is the entire universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to claim to be an I Ching historian. I know some things. I've read some books about the history of it. I know it more than anything on a practical level, for what it's done for me. Like as far as the RPG thing, like using the I Ching, it's kind of like trying to use the Game Genie a little bit. If you remember the Game Genie back in the day, for like the Nintendo, like you're trying to take losses less. Like you don't consult the I Ching to make terrible decisions. You consult the I Ching to make better decisions and to avoid problems, and to see pitfalls that are on their way, or obstacles you might face in life. So yeah, with the I Ching, I mean it has to do with yin and yang, the male and feminine, active and passive. And a lot of the times it'll tell you to be passive. And honestly, for most life situations, being passive it usually gets you away from trouble more often than being active. So one thing you'll see with a lot of hexagrams and lines in the I Ching is, it'll tell you to fall back basically. Then, sometimes you might get some readings where it tells you to actually take action. It all depends, depending on the circumstances you're asking about. But really, it's to flow with the course of things instead of trying to go against them. If you go against them, you might get some bruises, some bumps, some brushes. So that's basically the gist of it. I mean, back in the day, like 3,000 years ago, when this was first started, like emperors and the political figures would use the I Ching to kind of direct their rule. And I think when the communist revolution happened, I believe I remember hearing that like the use of the I Ching was limited. It wasn't favored by leadership. So I'm not sure of the popularity right now in China of the I Ching. But hopefully more people start using it. I would like to see it become as popular as the tarot is. It was more popular back in like the 70s and 60s with all the hippies and whatnot, but I'd like to see it make a comeback, and supplant these cards with swordsmen and queens and kings on them.
And that's interesting. So Tell me why that is.
Honestly, like the tarot, I mean, it all depends on your expertise. Some people are really experts in the tarot and they can get what they need from it. But just the images, while it's nice sometimes, like I feel like it's open to interpretation a lot more than the I Ching. I feel like with the I Ching, you throw your coins, you get a line or a hexagram or multiple lines, and because there's words, there's only so much straying that you can do from what those words actually mean. So there's less of a chance for confusion, I think, once you get a feel for the hexagrams and lines. I mean, a lot of the stuff is archaic. It's a lot of old language in a lot of cases because it was translated by a lot of people like 100 plus years ago. But there's also just a lot of old things that were around 3,000 years ago. I'm hoping that eventually with my work I can create interpretations and whatnot that are, practical and straightforward enough that people can just apply them and use them like instantly to get clarity. But there is a learning curve with it, but there's a learning curve with the tarot too. And with the tarot, there's so many books upon books of this interpretation, that interpretation. There's like 30 different words associated with each card. Like it gets to be too much for me. And with the I Ching, there's only so many ways you can interpret like a line telling you that you're in over your head with water. Like for example, like 28 line 6, like I can bring up that line right now. It's too much to wade into, immersing one's head, brutal, make no mistakes. Like there's only so many ways you can interpret that. It doesn't sound pleasant. And if you pull some tarot cards, you get a Queen of Hearts, and then you get it next to Death, and then you get it next to the Fool. Like you can just go all over the place and say, "Oh, this card is good, that card isn't." But let me stop talking though, because I'm going to sound ignorant when it comes to the tarot, because I know some tarot people out there are going to be like, "This motherfucker does not know what he's talking about."
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to clickbait anybody or goad you into dumping on it, but I was just wanting to know why it's the system you prefer, and I think I understand now. It's weird the way. Help me out. When you talked about leadership, it's almost like summoning a counselor without having to rely on a person.
Right. I think that definitely is like, it's like I Ching. The I Ching is a mentor in 3 pennies in the book you're using. Like all the people, like I wish a lot of the kids out there that are like, "Oh, I need a mentor. I need to do this. I need someone to learn from." Like mentors are such a topic that are talked about so much in our society and whatnot. But like, just pick up 3 pennies in a translation of the I Ching, and there's your mentor. Like that'll tell you to not do this and to do that. Just, but of course, like I said, there's a learning curve. Hopefully, with my work, eventually people find it a lot more straightforward and are able to do things like that. But I believe it is a mentor in just 3 pennies in a book.
Can you talk to us about a recent? I mean, here's me straining with the analogies again, but talk to me about a recent game or a reading and what you saw and how you used it to help yourself, like recently. Can you tell a story?
Let me see if, I mean, so one thing I do, I do readings for every hour. I'm crazy, okay? I do readings for every hour of my day that I plan on being awake. For one, it helps me get more experience with certain lines and hexagrams and different variations of readings. But also, I like to have that context as I'm going through things. And I also do a daily reading for what do I need to know about my day, as well as what my job is for that day. So as far as that goes, let me see if I can.
That's
Go ahead.
okay while you're looking, because that brought up a question in my mind, which was doing it with the frequency you do. Does it have it seems like the act in itself might be, the ritual is a comfort too. Like,
Yes, definitely.
the minute you take it out of the box, you're maybe more receptive to a better state. I don't know.
Yeah, like it's the thing about it, using the I Ching, it can turn into a dependency of some sort. It can be the same as grabbing a Xanax or something like that. Like you can pick up the coins, you can ask some questions, it'll soothe your anxiety sometimes. Sometimes it'll fuel your anxieties because it'll tell you the reality of the situation and not just what you want to hear. But it can definitely be therapeutic. I think it just needs to be used responsibly in that way, because I know if I was in a certain mind state like I used to be, like 9 years ago or so, I'd probably be, I'd probably have 20,000 readings. But yeah, I mean, it can very easily turn into a dependency. But you have to live the life. You have to live out the readings. You can know what's going to happen, but you're always going to have to live it out anyway. So you're going to have to take those lumps, whatever the reading says is going to happen. You're going to have to go through it. So it can be therapeutic, but I like to think of it as an airbag. Precognition in general, once you get an idea of what's going to happen, it can cushion the blow a little bit.
Yeah, and of course, and that again is the point of difference between something that may on the surface look like a game with rules and and its own set of signals, but the purpose of a game often is to become something else or to hide and
Right.
and have consciously, albeit a different sort of story in which you have a certain kind of known agency, which even in the stressful moments and the tug and pull of a board game can be stressful. But like I said, it's all going to be over in 45 to 90 minutes, and then you'll all have a story to tell. But although I will say, playing board games, it's weird. It seems like I Ching is more like is it more like a mirror or a telescope to you?
To me, it's more like a telephone. I feel like it's like a vehicle where a message can get through it. Like a message gets carried through the I Ching.
Okay.
It gives you like it's almost like echolocation. Like divination is in a way like echolocation. You get to see the contours, the shapes of things, and whatnot. You might not see all of the details, but you can at least see enough to not walk into a wall, basically.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, so it's more of an outward thing, because in that essence, a board game to me is a mirror in many ways, and a lot of this is one of my soapbox points about board games, is that people are the most important equipment of it, and I don't care how many cool things you bought. If you're at the table of shitty people, there's no good game in the world. And a lot of the time, how you play and act in a game is people bring all their best and worst selves onto that board.
Mm-hmm.
And the game itself, the mechanics, the stories it try to sell, is meaningless if you've got someone at the table who's more interested in what's on their phone than what's happening in the shared area of the game. You've got someone who is acting out a grudge against someone, or if you're a fundamentally dishonest or aggressive person, you're going to play that way, and it reflects it back to you.
Right.
And that, but yeah, it's not going to tell you anything past that. And I'll tell you that there's people's like, should I get this game? Should I get that game? I'm like, tell me who you're playing with.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you whether your games are any good. Because I got to tell you, years and years ago, we had awesome group that met every Saturday. And when that group fell apart, it was never quite the same again because people just didn't engage with it the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird. I think, there's a whole intense and rich world of solo board gamers. There's one I follow on Twitter. Forgot his handle. He's pretty much the king of the board game geek solo board game thing. There's dozens and dozens of games that, if they're not made for a solo player, can have a solo option where you sit there and absent anything, it's just you versus the game, and no one there to be accountable to but yourself. But I actually love solo games because I moved to a new part of the country. It was winter. I didn't know a lot of people down here. There was a plague. I started going back through my pile. I was like, oh, this one plays solo. And I'd break out a whiskey and play them. And honestly, had a great time. And is I Ching something like, say, I know you have obviously 10,000 test plays, should certainly it make you, if not, the king of the mountain, at least way further up than a lot of people have climbed. And is it something you can do with another person across the table? Like, for example, say, hey, Jonathan, this all sounds interesting. Give me a peek into this. Or do you like just collect some of my data and be like, I'll get back to you with a report?
I mean, you could do that, but see, you would still want to reference something that had the translation of the lines and the reading. I mean, some people probably have enough knowledge of the trigrams and whatnot that they could do some type of reading without a book. But I personally don't want to ever do that. I have interpretations that I've built up over time from my personal experiences and also from asking the I Ching about the I Ching. So I have like a set of interpretations for each line and hexagram, and I've vetted those by, holding them up against my readings and being like, okay, does that match? And they do, because I still have them. So some people could probably have someone right across from them and just read the trigrams and tell you about the yin and yang and how they interact and all that. I personally am not interested in that, really. And I feel like a lot of people that divine for others using the I Ching don't do that. So it's not quite like tarot, where you could just lay down 3 cards and you could just freewheel and freestyle and just be like, this means that, this means that. I mean, once you know the line, like me, I can, if you tell me if you pick a line out of the I Ching, I can tell you the gist of that line, basically, just off the top of my head. So I could do that if we did a reading in person. But still, like, it's nice to have context and things like that.
So you like it again. You like the more structured toolbox.
Right.
I totally get that. So, hey, this is Inquisitor Cinnamon Apple Cheese Dick. We've been talking about the JK's personal I Ching practice. If you want to learn I highly recommend you follow him on Twitter, because not only does he give samplings of some of his readings, but he's also a copywriter, a true hip hop head, and also a really witty guy. And he just has a flair for a sentence. And then even when I don't understand what the hell he's talking about, I always like So JK, thanks for telling us a little bit about the I Ching. Is Twitter the best way to people to get at you if they want to talk about this, or you take the reins here?
Yeah, definitely just hit me up on Twitter, or you can go to twodreams.us. I mean, my all my information and everything is there. You can just hit me up. The Patreon is there as well. But yeah, Twitter is the best place. I'm there. I've been there for like 13 years or some shit. I mean, it's insane.
Hey, everybody, strap in. Here comes Track of the Week with the JK. As promised, it's Inquisitor Cinnamon Apple Cheese Dick back with my homie, the Mystic, the Oracle, the JK, because I told him if he came on and told us about I Ching that he could do track of the week again. Last time you did Keep It Thorough by Prodigy, if I recall, which is a track I hadn't heard before then, because being the way I'm exploring the hip hop channels and pathways, don't laugh at me, but I am just now getting to exploring all the tracks on Mobb Deep's first album. It's amazing.
You might actually be talking about the second album, but
which is the one that says, as long as I send you back to the essence, I don't give a fuck about my presence.
That's probably the infamous.
Yeah.
Juvenile Hell was their first one. They're on the cover of that with sickles over their shoulders, which is...
See, there you go. Educated again. So JK here to helm track of the week. We're re-recording this. His interview for I Ching came out great, but for some reason, everything just shit the bed. And JK, did I also tell you that that night, not only when I recorded that, I broke my big chain.
You didn't tell me that.
My pride and joy is I have it because almost everything I have is silver. Not only because I prefer the color, but silver gives you more budget for customization. And I have a 30-inch, 6.5 millimeter Rolo Link with a big diamond bezel and a Space Marines custom-made gold 500K Godwin pattern bolter in the middle of it. And that same night I talked to you, I must have been hella drunk because I was doing Mr. T. I had all my chains on at once.
Oh, man.
In the bathroom, and I stood up really fast. And that chain snagged on a corner, and one of the links just went ping.
Oh, wow.
Next, I'm looking at it all on the floor. So, so based on the fact that we've had to do a couple runs at this, we're going to talk about Phil Collins. I Could Feel It in the Air Tonight.
Yes, that's exactly the song.
No, it's a Beanie track. What is it?
It's Beanie Siegel, Feel It in the Air. I believe this album, I got this album, I believe, the day I graduated high school, I think.
Okay. And by the way, preparatory to us making this second run at this track, I listened to it. Okay. And by the way, and because I love you and I know this song means something to you, I'm going to hear what it means to you. But for me, deep lyrics must accompany hand in glove, banging production. And based on, do you remember when I was hassling you the other night with all those Funk Dubious remixes from DJ Muggs and all those Hard Knocks remixes of hip hop classics? You know me, I need fucking fast tempo, like ear splitting snares and really catchy samples. And I have to tell you, I just being honest with you, before we started this call, I threw that song on. I could not get past second 51.
Man, that's a loss on your end. That's also a heavy D beat, man. That's a heavy D beat.
Did I bail out too early?
I mean, it's a melancholy song. I mean, that's by design. It's definitely not there to get you hype.
Yeah, but I just have to be honest with you. It's just, I'm sitting there listening to it, waiting to be transported, and I want you to get into the segments you like. Because I know Beanie was a hell of a rapper, but I just have to admit, like, the production on this one lost me. I didn't like the chord progression. I didn't like the keyboard tone. I didn't like the time signature. And I didn't like the pitter pat beats.
Man, rest in peace to Heavy D then, because you just shit all over his beat, man.
Heavy D did that?
Heavy D did that.
I just fucking shit on the hipster?
Yeah, man.
See?
Rest in peace.
Anyway, enough of my impressions. Tell me why you chose this track and why you love it. Let's talk about a segment that's meaningful to you.
Yeah, so I chose this song because it goes hand in hand with divination, intuition, precognition. I mean, Feel It in the Air. It's about sensing things. It's about having hunches, it's about getting a feeling for something that's not overt. But it's a very relatable song if you have ever dabbled in paranoia.
Yeah. Dabbling in paranoia. That's a loaded phrase, by the way, my friend. Tell you what, why don't we listen to a selection right now, and just hear some of the lyrics and the feel that draw the JK to this song.
Something going on. I feel funny, can't tell me nothing different. My nose twitching, intuition setting in like Steve Vision. I still close my eyes, I still see visions. Still hear that voice in the back of my mind. So what I do, I still take heed, I still listen. I still paint that perfect picture. I still shine bright like a prism. My words still skipping.
That was our first selection of Feel It in the Air by Beanie Siegel, brought to us by my guest host, our guest host, and all around mystical homie, the JK. And I think it's my fault. I already started a squabble with you from the first segment. Like I said, there's some synergy between the meaning of a rhyme and its timeliness, but you know what it is about something that's your favorite, and this is something that bothers me that people don't acknowledge. Whether it's your top 3 favorite restaurants or your top 3 favorite rappers, what people don't know is they're not talking about the song. They're talking about where they were when they heard it, what the air smelled like that night, how the relationship with their family was that night, what time of year was it. And they're like, oh, that's my favorite restaurant. And they go back there and they order the same dish, expecting that same feeling. It doesn't happen. You know why? Because you weren't with your old friend, and it wasn't the same light air of conviviality, and it was a different time of year. And you wonder why that dish wasn't different. You're not really talking about the dish or the song. You're talking about where you were in your own fractal emotional tableau.
Exactly. And Nietzsche, impermanence. I mean, that's what it's all about. Like, you can't recreate a moment in the past. It was what it was. It is what it is. And I mean, I think I said some shit about like nostalgia. Like, nostalgia is when you think you're imagining something that you think you had, but you never really did. All you have are constructions of memories, little slivers of things that happen here and there, little pictures, but you can never recreate that.
And the danger, the intoxicating danger, is when you imagine that you can. And it's so funny you said that word nostalgia. Right. When he was still on this earth, my pappy, God rest his soul, used to say, nostalgia is prelude to fascism. And
I'm gonna have to think about that one.
Well, think about it, and this is a heuristic I've developed on my own since. It's like, if you ever want to spot somebody who is either on the far right or the far left, people on the far right want to drag you back to a past that never was. People on the far left want to drag you into a future that will never be.
I mean, yeah, that sounds about right to me.
And most rightist, populist, fascist, nationalists, whatever you always hearken back to a golden age.
Yeah.
The Nazis talk about this fantasy of Aryan purity.
Right.
Or all the way up to now, the Trump, make America great again. There's something golden in the past. By the way, that was also a Reagan phrase. I think it's a sad sign of the times that our cultural and political memory is so short that Reagan looks good now. Reagan was a piece of shit. 8 different ways. On his best day, he's a piece of shit. But JK, thank you for the snippet of the song. Is there any, we've heard snippet 1, is there any something you want to send us home to before I go on a tirade about mosquitoes or the decline of the boxing world?
No, just, I mean, if you're interested in anything like divination, just you only learn it by doing it, really. I mean, you gotta experience it. You gotta keep a journal. and reflect on what happened when you got those readings. And I mean, that's one way to battle nostalgia, is to write down what actually happened, so you're not deluding yourself.
Those were the good old days, and you write it down. It's like, I got herpes from my buddy's girlfriend, and I busted his lip. Way to go, me.
Yeah. I mean, definitely don't want to be drugged up on some fantasy world that never happened.
Absolutely, and I think all of it is the whole concept of many wells, one river, and the river is being conscious,
right,
and honest about who you are and where you are, even if, as you say, means accepting large amounts of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the thing that poisons our political and personal discourse is people's desire for certainty.
Right.
And it's like
that poisons everything.
Yeah, and we're at the point now. It's like people are like, "When's normal coming back with COVID?" It's gone.
Yeah, man.
Only like like the first plummet of the roller coaster before it takes you up the big drop.
Mm-hmm.
This COVID, dude, the drought is coming.
Yeah,
the water wars are coming.
I mean, it's real shit. Like down in Orlando, they're telling people to conserve water so they can use it for like fucking respirators or something like that. It's crazy.
Saw that as well. And here in the American West, we have a drought. I mean, anyway, let me get on my high horse. But if I were the governor, I'd bring out the National Guard. I'd say, first of all, Kentucky bluegrass is banned. You don't need that fear. You don't need it. We need that shit to grow food. And then also, I'd send the National Guard down to Salida. Salida, Colorado, beautiful little town in Chaffee County, where Nestle has one of its 2 North American extraction plants. They're gulping They're gulping up spring water out of the ground and selling it back to us at markup. Fuck those Swiss motherfuckers. Oh, this has gone far afield. The JK dog, I always appreciate you, and thank you for. I know while I took exception with this song, you're always incredibly patient with me.
No problem.
No, the Bean song. If you go onto Spotify and look up Breakup Gaming Society, every track of the week that I can find. Sometimes Spotify is too lame for our exquisite taste in like look under the roots and for remixes, but they're mostly there. And by the virtue of me having offered you this platform and you picked it, that is going on the goddamn Spotify list. Beanie Siegel. I keep thinking about Phil Collins. I'm a victim of my own joke. What's the name of the song?
Feel it in the air.
Feel it in the air. And so, JK, that's the show. Thank you so much for riding with us. You're always a thoughtful, funny, and graceful presence. I appreciate you. And
no doubt. And appreciate you.
And you didn't hear the cold open, but I'm a former apostate boxing fan who just had to give it up. And my wife gave it up too. We watched it together for years. Like every fight, we watched Gennady come up, Gennady Golovkin from like his first like American fight at Turning Stone Casino in New York, against some Polish guy, all the way up to the top of the thing. And the fact is, there is no sport I have seen that has more contempt for its fighters or its fans than boxing. And
I mean, that sounds about right.
And the first when they finally rematched, when they finally 2 years too late matched Triple G and Canelo Alvarez, and charged you what $75, $95 for the privilege of it's actually a good fight. But they have that judge named Adelaide Bird who turns in these inexplicable scorecards, and like these guys are putting brain damage on the line, and their careers is like so. The and plus with the promoter bullshit. Imagine you are going to like a nice steakhouse with your girl, and you're you dressed up that night, and you dusted off your vest and your tie's knotted right, and you go, I'd like the surf and turf, and they tell you, oh, I'm sorry, right now the filet mignon people aren't really talking to the lobster people, so we can't play them at once. If you like, I could serve you lobster with some Van Camp pork and beans, or some filet with some red hot Funyuns. And you're like, fuck that, I want surf and turf, but you don't get it. And when they do finally plate it, it's 4 years too late and it all smells rotted. They did it with Mayweather and Pacquiao. That match was made 7 years too late.
Yeah.
And these guys fought their brains out. And what? And so my final thought on seeing the fact that they've just booked Pacquiao for a fight against some guy I don't know is that here's my prediction: is that Pacquiao is going to be fighting from inside an iron lung, and he's going to open the door just long enough to get jabs out, and Adelaide Bird is going to score it 150-0 for Pacquiao. That's my prediction. Good times in the boxing world. JK, thank you for riding along. I'm going to see if somehow my minimal skills can get this great segment into the podcast. What do you think about that, my friend?
I think you'll have success.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Peace.
May you fight long and well.